Hello everyone, welcome back to Otoshi Monologues, my excuse to talk, rant, and embarrass myself in front of all of y'all. Today I will be officially wrapping up my study abroad experience by sharing some advice that I wish I knew before diving into this journey. And if you're thinking about studying abroad, I hope this video can give you some peace of mind about the process. My experience is limited to doing a short-term study abroad trip through my 4-year university, specifically the UC EAP program, so if that's what you're looking into, that's fantastic. If not, I still think this video can give you some guidance, even if you're just planning to travel abroad for vacation. The things I'm saying may seem very obvious to you. If that's the case, feel free to click away, but you'll never know if you miss something interesting. And for that one person who really just needs someone to go through the really basic things, aka that was me, I got you. So, I'll start with some tips for preparing to go abroad. Number one thing, don't be afraid to apply for the program. The biggest hurdle for me was going in and talking to someone about the options I had. And they work with you to figure out what country you want to go to and which programs match the classes you want to take, etc. And I've come to learn that at least at the UC system, they want more kids to study abroad. So even though there's an application and deadlines, most of them are pretty lenient. And most programs shouldn't be too competitive, so just completing an application should give you a pretty good shot. After you have a program, and/or after you've decided you wanted to travel abroad, even if it's just for funsies, you should make sure that your passport isn't expired, or if you don't have your passport, you should get your passport. And then look at what the visa situation is like in the country you're going to. I had to get a visa to go to Japan since I was staying there for longer than 90 days. And in California, they only have 2 Japanese embassies, one in San Francisco and one in LA. And you have to physically go to one of these embassies after you've gotten your certificate of eligibility from your host university in order to apply for a visa. Then, assuming you have all the correct paperwork, they'll take your application, and then you have to come back once they call you, saying your application is ready to be picked up. So if you live pretty far from one of these embassies, be prepared to make 2 trips in order to get your visa. The nitty-gritty details are very country and university specific, so please read over the instructions that your school sends you. If you saw last time, not reading papers very closely is what cost me big time at the Incheon airport. Then the next set of things to worry about is in preparation for when you land in your foreign country. Obviously, pack all your essential items. I think the biggest thing here is if you have any prescription medication, make sure you have an ample supply to last you through your whole trip, because you don't want to be scrambling around a foreign country trying to get prescribed medication. But also make sure that you can bring your prescribed medication into your specific country. Then you gotta be thinking about money. Are you going to be using an international credit card with no transaction fees? I used a Capital One Quicksilver card, and I know that Chase's Sapphire card is also a good travel abroad option. Or if you go the cash route, are you planning to bring your country's currency with you beforehand? Or bringing your native currency and then exchanging it once you land in the new country? Or have a debit card that doesn't charge crazy transaction fees and have access to an international ATM and then you can get cash that way? But make sure that your credit and debit card companies know which countries you're traveling to so they don't block your transactions. And try to get this money thing sorted out at least 1 month before your trip. Trust me, it makes it a lot less stressful. Only in an emergency should you exchange currency at the airport because the rates are really bad. And last tip about money, I think you should always be traveling with at least $50 worth of your home currency on you, especially if it's US dollars. Because I would think people would be less likely to steal it, but if you're really in a bind, you can either find somewhere to exchange it, or find some store that will take it. Next, you gotta think about your mode of communication while abroad. Are you gonna run on SIM cards with a certain set limit? Or are you gonna go the pocket Wi-Fi route? Or are you just gonna get an international phone plan? In Japan, I used the prepaid SIM cards and got 10 gigs for 90 days. And it was the most cost effective and ended up being perfect for the amount of data that I use. But you do have to be conservative with your use. I basically tried to limit it to texting and using Google Maps. But when I was in Korea, I opted for the pocket Wi-Fi, which gives you unlimited access for however many days you rent the Wi-Fi device for. I'm pretty sure that all international airports will have kiosks where you can buy any of these options. So before leaving for your trip, make sure you know which option you're planning to buy and what part of the airport you need to go to in order to find it. Next, look up the transportation system for whatever country you're going to. In Japan and Korea, they have specific transit cards that you can buy and reload at various train stations. In Korea, you can also buy and reload at certain convenience stores. And it makes it so much easier than paying exact transit fees every time. In Japan, you pay 500 yen in order to get a card, but when you're leaving the country, you can return the card at the same machines you would use to reload, and you get your 500 yen back. So I really don't see a reason not to use it over cash. Next, if for whatever reason you need to store your luggage like I had to do when I was in Korea, know that major airports and major train stations should have somewhere for you to keep your luggage. In Japan, at the train stations, they have lockers, but it's only 1-day storage. But at certain larger train stations, they have counters where you can leave your luggage for longer periods of time. In Korea, the Incheon International Airport has 2 post offices in the departure area where you would check in for your flights, one at each end of the terminal. So go to whichever one you end up being closer to. I tried to drop mine off at the one close to letter N in the terminal, but they were full, so I had to walk my way on all the way back to letter B, and they were able to take my bag. So maybe just start at B, especially if you just picked up your pocket Wi-Fi from the counter located close to B, instead of starting at B and then having to walk all the way to M and then all the way back to B while profusely sweating. I think for both countries it was around $10 per night of storage, so in my opinion, not too crazy. Now moving on to general tips for traveling. Don't be afraid to ask for help, especially at the airport. It's their job to help people, and in my experience, they've all been really nice. Also, if you say something stupid and embarrass yourself, you'll probably never encounter these people again, so you're fine. Also, actively keep track of what you're buying to make sure it can all fit into your suitcases so that when you're about to leave, you're not scrambling trying to weigh suitcases and stuff everything into your bag. Pro tip for those studying abroad, check your host university's laundry room for a scale. That way you can make sure your luggage isn't overweight, and you can rearrange items as necessary before going to the airport to fly home. Honestly, it was the biggest brain move I had when I was in Japan. And finally, another one that I found really useful was downloading the Google Translate data pack for whatever country you're going to. That way you don't have to use any Wi-Fi or data, but you can still get around if you have 0 language skills, aka me. Now some country-specific things that I noticed when I was in Japan and Korea. In Japan, transportation will become a large portion of your expenses. On the local buses, there's no transfer system, so if you gotta get on a different bus, you have to pay again. And some buses you just pay a flat fee no matter how many stops you're on for, which can be a good or bad thing depending on where you're trying to go. So plan for that, but it is offset by food being so much cheaper than it is in the US. Also, there's no tipping, as in it's not allowed. This applies to Korea as well. So you're saving 15 to 20% already. But on the topic of food, you can't take leftovers home. So you either gotta eat it or leave it. You can get food to go, but once you start eating it at the restaurant, I think for reputation reasons, in case you get sick from eating the leftovers and rumors spread about the restaurant, they won't let you take leftovers. This also applies to Korea. Next, the severity of the supermarket discount bento. In one of my other Otoshi monologues, I talk about it a little, but be sure to take advantage of it if you can. In Korea, a lot of food places have a 2-person set minimum. A lot of traditional Korean food is family style, so if you wanted to be able to try some authentic Korean dishes, you better find a friend or be prepared to pay double and eat a lot. Overall, I feel like it's a little restricting to be a solo tourist in Korea. That's why I was so lucky to have a travel companion with me for the majority of my trip. But if you are alone, there are still places where you can find single servings, but I think it's going to be a lot more soup-based dishes. And with that, I can finally put this study abroad experience to rest. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I didn't cover, but hopefully this at least pushes you in the right direction for studying abroad. Before I went abroad, I thought all these kids that were hooting and hollering about how this is the best experience of their life were just plain crazy. But I now have become one of those crazies. If you're interested in getting out of your comfort zone and meeting tons of new people with different values, opinions, and culture, study abroad! explore this gigantic planet that we call home, especially before we destroy it through global warming. But that's a whole other can of worms. Thanks for listening to me ramble. If you enjoyed the lovely sounds of my voice and want to see my journeys through Japan and Korea, click one of these playlists, or even better, click this button to subscribe so you can come back and watch those videos in your free time. Have a fantastic day and night, and I'll talk to y'all next time I do something interesting. Mata next time! Oh, my brain.